Good evening, everyone. Welcome to yet another episode of Reflections on Our Shared Past, a series that Asha, Aligarh Society of History and Archaeology, and Ganga Jamani jointly host. Professor Rizavi, who represents Asha, is the face of this show, and I tend to do the operations. Today, Professor Rizavi is unwell. He is COVID positive. We have a guest presenter instead today who's not a new face to most of you. We have Miss Rana Safi. Rana Appa, who's a historian, author, translator, will be in conversation with Dr. Anand Taneja. The two will be talking about Ghalib. And of course, we welcome questions from you. Since I have a Banaras connection, I was going through the letters and I came across this beautiful quote, which translates as the city is so beautiful and lovely that even a stranger misses counting his sufferings. If I would have no fear of religious contempt and criticism from my enemies, I would have left my religion. To count beads, bear sacred threads, put a mark on the forehead, and in this way I would have passed my life on the bank of the Ganga. Thus wrote a 30-year-old Ghalib as he stopped in Banaras on his way to Calcutta. And Calcutta is very important today. So let's say, what is Ghalib's appeal? His appeal lies in perhaps his essential humanism. His voice is that of a person who's deeply pained and anguished by the various ills plaguing the society, and he philosophizes about life. Actually, it was alleged by earlier commentators that Ghalib's modernism, his egalitarianism, and his secularism stems from the personal views of, one of his translators, Russell. It would appear very premature if one is to look at his ghazals or his letters, because his modernism and his rational outlook is evident from an episode which actually involves Sir Syed Ahmed Khan, the rationalist and the reformist. On Sir Syed's request, Ghalib wrote the preface to the former edition of Ain Akbari. Writing it in, when he wrote it in verse, he castigates the book as backward looking. And he asked the editor to stop flogging a dead horse, and that's a famous story, of course. So basically, he urges the editor to look at things and learn from the modern scientific inventions and works being undertaken by the British, things like steam engines, railways, telegraph, and then, of course, he says that you have to learn the administration and discipline. And we're talking of someone who was even ahead of the leading rationalists of his time, Sir Syed. So, I mean, from what he wrote, and there are so many verses and so many of the extracts one can pull out for this, where Ghalib would appear to be a seer far ahead of his times, a saint far removed from his world and his times. So Ghalib said, ये मिसाइल तवस्सुफ ये तेरा बयां गालिब तुझे हम वली समझते जो ना Badakawar Hota. I think Rana Appa would be justice to this. So let me bring her on board. And of course, we will learn more about this from our guest this evening. I'm bringing Rana Appa on board. Good evening, Appa.
Good evening, Shagufta, and thank you so much for that wonderful introduction to Ghalib and his work. And good evening and adab, everybody. Namaste. Um, I welcome you on behalf of Aligarh Society of History and Archaeology and Ganga Jamni Foundation. And before I welcome our guest today, I would like to just send some prayers for Professor Ali Nadeem Redabi and his family, and for everybody else who is suffering from this disease, COVID. May they all recover, and may we soon be free of this pandemic and the suffering that it has brought in its wake. I'm happy to present today's talk on a topic close to my heart and engage with Anand, a dear friend. I hope you're all staying indoors and spending time building your immunity, and of course watching Ganga Jamni on the weekends. Ghalib's andaz-e-bayan, we agree with him, is distinct from that of the other shura that dotted the landscape of Rekhta. His works, he says, are replete with meaning. Ganjai Mani, literally a treasure of words or a treasure of meaning. And we have very little choice but to concur. What, however, is perplexing is Mirza Naushad's popularity, nay, his contemporary appeal, more than 150 years after he passed on. Numerous scholarly works add to the continually expanding corpus on Ghalib. What is this con- continuing appeal that transcends age, if not an evidence of his universalism? Ghalib was as much a product of his age as an outlier. It is true that under Bahadur Shah Zafar, the Mughal rule was largely non sectarian, often seen as a Piro Murshid rather than a ruler. But Ghalib went a few steps ahead. His keen observation, his skepticism, and his beliefs made him see much further than his peers. Not only was he dismissive of religious leaders and their bigotry, but he also constantly toyed with novel ideas. Ghalib is said to have written the Katba for the Shia Jama Masjid near Kashmiri Gate. He was considered a tafsili, and his beliefs so confounded even those close to him that in his death they could not decide whether to bury him according to Shia or Sunni customs. His views on Hinduism and Banaras, as Shagufta has just already elaborated, are evident in his Masnavi Chiraghe Dev. He once wrote, ईमान मुझे रोके है तो खींचे है मुझे कुफ्र काबा मेरे पीछे है कलीसा मेरे आगे. In this evening's talk, Anand V. Taneja explores an emerging trend with both authoritative Islamic discourse as well as Urdu public culture in North India, in which the poet Mirza Asadullah Khan Ghalib is portrayed as a saintly and prophetic figure. Anand aims to show that claiming Ghalib as an authoritatively Islamic figure at this historical moment, a moment of unprecedented Islamophobia and anti Muslim bias in India, is a profoundly radical claim which gestures towards a Muslim and crucially also non Muslim reclamation of pre colonial lifeways and intellectual, literary, and spiritual traditions as an antidote to the poisonous discourses of modern religious nationalism and sectarianism. Anand Vivek Taneja is Assistant Professor of Religious Studies and Anthropology at Vanderbilt University. He is an alumnus of Ramjas College, Delhi University, Jamia Millia Islamia, and Columbia University. He is the author of Genealogy, Time, Islam, and Ecological Thought in the Medieval Ruins of Delhi, 2017. Please join me in welcoming Anand to this show.
Thank you, Apa. And let's welcome Dr. Anand Taneda. Good evening, Adab.
Adab, thank you, Shagufta. Thank you, Rana Appa, for those wonderful thoughts on Ghalib and for the introduction. My wishes to Nadeem Sahab, who couldn't be here. And I I'm really commend all of you for conducting this program with what's going on in India right now. So hopefully, Ghalib brings us some more cheer through in these dark times. I'm just going to take a minute to set up my slideshow and then I'll start talking. Yeah.
Sure. All right. So, in the meantime, let me share that please ask us your questions, and we really welcome your questions. And I am going to leave the floor now, Rana Apa.
All right. Screen window. So somehow my slide aren't coming up.
Never mind. You can email that to me.
Yeah, I'll do that.
And we can start a discussion, Apa. Can we talk about the times of Ghalib, maybe? And then we can sort of, in the meantime,
yeah, it worked and now it stopped working. It's weird. I've never used StreamYard before. I usually hear the default in the US is just using Zoom for everything. So
let's give StreamYard another try, shall we, Anand?
Yeah. I'm just emailing this to you, and I'm going to try this again. It's not your fault. I'm not used to it. That's all.
Till then, you can just start
Yes.
your verbal presentation, and
Yeah.
Shagufta will put up the
Yeah.
screen there.
Yeah, I'm just sending it to you right now. All right, so here we go. Okay, I've sent it to you. I'm going to try this once again and see what happens with share screen if it works. And it's not working. So it's just the PowerPoint is not showing up when I try to screen. Anyway, I've sent it to you. You should have got it.
If you open the PowerPoint again,
Yeah,
you just open the PowerPoint again on your screen, on your laptop.
yeah, it is open.
No, close it and reopen it, and
Oh.
then it'll pop.
Okay. All right.
So, Apa, the verse that you read out, I really like that. ये मिसाइल है तवस्सुफ, ये तेरा बयां गालिब. I want to know, like, what is, like, how did you get introduced to Ghalib? How is it that your introduction happened to Ghalib when you were younger? Everyone in India knows
For me,
Ghalib.
it was my mother. My mother was very fond of Ghalib. And in fact, Ghalib and Mir and Iqbal and Sahir, these were the four poets that were discussed in our house, and Akbar Allahabadi. इसके अलावा और शायद कोई पोएट मैंने जब तक के मतलब ये शायर नहीं शुरू किया, मैंने तो मॉडर्न पोएट्स के बारे में मुझे मालूम ही नहीं था. मॉडर्न पोएट्स तो मैंने जब सुने, बिकॉज फॉर मी एवरीथिंग स्टॉप्ड एट साहिर लुधियानवी, दैट इज व्हाट वी ग्रू अप हियरिंग. एंड कोइंसिडेंटली हमने भी जिक्र किया कि शिया जामा मस्जिद पे कतबा इनका है विच आई हैव गॉन एंड मुझे आई वाज इंट्रोड्यूस्ड टू दैट बाय प्रोफेसर यूनुस जाफरी. एंड आज 19 रमजान है जो शब ज़रबत है, व्हेन हजरत अली वाज इंजर्ड which led to his eventual death 2 days later. So I think it's a very suitable day to be talking about Ghalib and his love for Ali also.
Absolutely.
I tried not working.
Never mind. I think we're beginning with the
doesn't matter.
discussion, and I'll.
Yeah. The slides aren't that important. I'll begin. And I think the first share I'm talking about is the one Shagufta was mentioning, Ye Misail Tasawwuf. Anyway, on the evening of March 12, 2018, there was a program on the famous 19th century Urdu poet Mirza Asadullah Khan Ghalib in South Delhi's City Fort Auditorium. The main auditorium has a capacity of about 1,800 people, and this was nearly full. Ustad Iqbal Ahmad Khan, a prominent musician of the Delhi Gharana who passed away last year, was staging a narrative of Ghalib's life, as told through his wife's point of view, punctuated by Ghalib's ghazal set to music. At the beginning of the program, one of Ghalib's ghazals was performed as a qawwali. Before the rest of the program commenced, Ustad Iqbal Ahmad Khan came on stage and said, "This is the first time Ghalib's ghazal has been sung as a qawwali. A reason is that Ghalib was a Sufi of the Nizami Silsila. He had pledged by allegiance, bayat, to Pir Nasruddin Shah Kale Sahab. I consider Ghalib a Sufi, even though he himself says, Ye masail tasawwuf, ye tera bayan Ghalib, tujhe hum wali samajhte jo na bada khar hota. These matters of Sufism, this discourse of yours, Ghalib, we would consider you a saint if you weren't a wine drinker. But we consider him a saint anyway. Hum log to wali samajhte hi hain." A slow and uncertain clapping began from the audience. The audience's hesitant applause is not surprising. At least since the late 1980s, when a TV serial on Ghalib's life was shown on national TV, in Indian popular culture, Ghalib has been portrayed as a figure who chooses to be outside the sphere of religion. The TV show begins near the end of Ghalib's life, with him still unable to enter a mosque. Among many contemporary Muslims, and in the academic study of Islam and Muslim societies, poets and poetry have often been understood as being distinct from and standing apart from the larger Islamic discursive tradition. To publicly claim Ghalib as a Muslim saint, as the late Ustad Iqbal Ahmad Khan did, is to trouble the assumed boundary between poetry and piety. What might be at stake in troubling this boundary in contemporary India? To claim Ghalib as saint in contemporary Delhi is to make a claim for the poet as not a figure marginal to the Islamic tradition, but rather as a figure at its critical edge. To use edge instead of margin is to understand being on the edge, experimenting with the limits of tradition, as potentialities of critique and innovation internal to the tradition. To claim Ghalib as a saint as an authoritatively Islamic figure. At this historical moment of unchecked Islamophobia and anti-Muslim bias in India is then a profoundly radical claim which gestures towards a Muslim and crucially also non-Muslim reclamation of pre-colonial lifeways and intellectual, literary and spiritual traditions as an antidote to the poisonous discourses of modern religious nationalism and sectarianism. As I aim to show in the rest of this talk, Ustad Iqbal Ahmad Khan's proclamation of Ghalib as Wali is not singular, but part of a larger trend within both authoritative Islamic discourse as well as Urdu public culture in North India, which transcends the boundaries of religious identity. So the rest of the talk is going to proceed in a few sections. And in the first, I talk about a talk I saw on YouTube on the effects of Karbala on Urdu literature, given by the prominent Indian Shia alim Ayatollah Aqil al-Gharwi. And after this talk, a young man got up to ask a question. What would you say about Mirza Ghalib's salvation? Mirza Ghalib ki nijat ke bare mein aap kya kahenge? Why does it happen that poets and literateurs are characterized by irreligiousness, ladiniyat, and complaining against God, khuda se shikwa, and drinking wine inside the mosque, and sitting outside the mosque and complaining against God? Here are brief excerpts from Aqil al-Gharwi's response. Poetry, shairi, has its own language. What is sad is that if this is not understood, there can be misunderstandings. For example, when in poetry the term sin, gunah, is used, do you understand it as sins of Sharia? If Ghalib says that in my breast there is much desire to sin, it means that there are yet potentials within me. I can still be bold, but society won't let me do it. It is in the meaning of jurrat, or audacity, and the expression of daring that the word sin comes up. Or the pious one who truly has an ascetic, zahidana temperament, we call him a non-conforming libertine, rind. And the one who acts pious merely to fool the world, we make fun, tanz karte hain, by calling him sheikh or zahid. Such figures have always been targets of critique of poets, great poets, and they should be targets of critique. There remains the question of whether he will be saved or not. This is a matter outside the limits of my authority. Ye mere daira-e-ikhtiyar ki baat nahi. How do we understand the student's question and the religious scholar's response? The student's question is not isolated in its anxieties about the place of poets in general, and Ghalib in particular, in religious life in South Asia. Anas Faizi, a popular humorous poet in contemporary Delhi, mentioned in a conversation how the very mention of Ghalib often brought about the implication, wo sharabi, that drunkard, in everyday conversations. Ayatollah Aqil al-Gharwi's response to the question of Ghalib's salvation draws on a very different understanding of poetry and its relation to religious life. Audacity and boldness, as expressed in Urdu poetry, are, in Aqil al-Gharwi's account, legitimate, even desirable qualities of religious life. Poets play a vital role in lampooning religious hypocrisy. Poetry thus expresses and embodies audacity and critique as valued modes of being Muslim. When I met Ayatollah Aqil al-Gharwi at the Babul Murad Center in Wembley, London in early November 2019, we talked about Ghalib as well. Ghalib is a very great poet, he said. He quoted the Urdu critic Zoe Ansari, who had said that Ghalib was the greatest poet of his era, daur, in any language. Then he quoted this Ghalib sher. Bas ke dushwar hai har kaam ka aasan hona. Aadmi ko bhi mayassar nahi insaan hona. It is so difficult for any work to be easy. Even for man, it is not easy to be human. This, he said, is a prophetic statement, Paygambari Bayan. All the prophets from Buddha to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, have come with the same message. Aap bani Adam na bane, aap insan bane. Don't become merely a child of Adam, become a human. In ascribing a revelatory, even prophetic status to Ghalib's poetry, Ayatollah Aqil al-Gharwi is drawing on a long genealogy of understanding Ghalib in Urdu literature, which we can date back to at least 1920, when Abdur Rahman Bijnori's Mahasin-e-Kalam-e-Ghalib was first published, and in which Bijnori stated, there are two divinely revealed Ilhami books of India, the Holy Vedas and Diwan-e-Ghalib. And Mahasin-e-Kalam-e-Ghalib is now on Rekhta, so if anyone wants to go and take a look, this statement is on page 1. Uh,
Nand, can I just interrupt 1 minute? Shagufta is saying she has not got your mail. Can you just resend it?
it's fine. I'll just talk. The slides don't matter so much, right?
Perfect. No problem.
Yeah. Also, because I think most people will be familiar with the people I'm talking about. So, right. There are two divinely revealed Ilhami books of India, the Holy Vedas and Diwan-e-Ghalib. So you can find this on Rekhta. For poets to claim to be and to understood to be prophetic is not unusual in the Islamic tradition. Poetry has a long history of being considered as meaningfully Islamic discourse because of its ongoing relation to the potentialities of revelation, or what Shahab Ahmad characterizes as the pretext of the revelation to Muhammad. This is an idea that Ghalib himself expresses in his published Urdu Diwan, most famously in the following couplet. आते हैं गैब से ये मज़ामी ख्याल में, गालिब सरीर खामा नवाए सरोश है. They come into the mind, these themes, from the invisible. Ghalib, the scratching of the pen, is the voice of an angel. In speaking of Ghalib, Ayatollah Aqil Al-Garwi emphasized that he was the greatest poet of his time. अपने दौर के सबसे बड़े शायर थे. Which is to say that Ghalib's poetry was prophetic for his age, right? In a radically different but historically parallel context, the ontological vulnerability of the Crow Native American nation when faced with the end of their traditional way of life, Jonathan Lear writes of the poet as a creative maker of meaningful space. This has also long been understood as the role of poetry in the Urdu tradition, where Ghalib has famously stated of his own poetry, poetry is meaning creation, it's not the measuring out of rhymes. Shairi mani afrini hai, kafiya paimai nahi. When we think of Ghalib's age, an age of revolutions, an age of rapid technical development, an age of the rapid growth of predatory capitalism as embodied by the East India Company, and its destruction of the life world of Mughal Delhi, how might Ghalib's poetry be prophetic, in the sense of telling us how to make meaning in, how to think and feel and be and act in this new world? We can understand his verse as prophetic because through his verse he makes one think about the gap between being man and becoming human, between Admi and Insan, a gap made more difficult to navigate by massive and violent changes in lifeways that unrestrained corporate capitalism and colonialism brought to the world and to Delhi. Thinking about this gap has been profoundly meaningful for young Muslims and others in an India ruled by an increasingly authoritarian regime committed to an ideology of exclusionary religious nationalism. It was during a conversation at the Walled City Cafe in Old Delhi in February 2018 that Abu Sufyan said, when I recently went to Ghalib's Haveli and read the couplets that are written on the walls there, some of them were so true for corporate life that I went crazy and I totally became a fan. मैं पागल ही हो गया, fan हो गया. The Ghalib verse that contained deep insight into corporate life for Abu Sufyan was the one that Ayatollah Aqil Al-Garwi had cited as prophetic. बस कि दुश्वार है हर काम का आसान होना, आदमी को भी मयस्सर नहीं इंसान होना. It is so difficult for any work to be easy. Even for man, it is not easy to be human. When I first met Abu Sufyan in February 2018, he was in his mid-20s working for Google in Gurgaon and also running a Facebook page called Purani Dilli Walon Ki Baatein. And the slide I was going to show here was a screenshot of their website. And he started Purani Dilli Walon Ki Baatein in 2013. Abu Sufyan is from a family which has long belonged to Old Delhi. They claim descent from the Mughals. And apart from a few years in Chandigarh to do a bachelor's degree in engineering, he has always lived in the old city. The Facebook page had started with a bout of homesickness after a few years in Chandigarh as a repository of the particular ways in which the folks of Old Delhi spoke, the sharp humor and peculiar usages of the Begamati and Karkhandari dialects of Old Delhi's Urdu. In the years since he had started the page, it had gained a large and dedicated audience. Purani Dilli Walon Ki Baatein had also started doing heritage walks through the old city, led by people from the old city rather than by professional historians. Abu Sufyan was busy organizing all of this and creating and coordinating and posting content on his Facebook page and website, along with his full time job in the corporate world. He worked a night shift in a corporate office in Gurgaon as a computer engineer. His timing synced with the American workday half a world away. His days he spent running the page and related activities. Corporate world में आपको इंसान नहीं समझा जाता. In the corporate world, you're not considered an insan, a human. What is seen is your productivity or how well you play office politics. Only then can you survive. You have no real friends, nor do you have any religious values left. It is also disconnecting you from your people. While staying in India, you cannot celebrate Diwali, you cannot celebrate Eid. Corporate life has affected our lives in such a way. We've forgotten what it's like to mingle together and talk to each other, to celebrate each other's festivals and religions. This all now stops at exchanging sweets. Abu Sufyan is an engineer by training who was working for one of the most renowned tech companies in the world. And yet, for him, his vision of being an insan, of human flourishing, was rooted not in the corporate world, but in the narrow, winding streets of Old Delhi and the modes of human sociality they continued to embody. After that, I'm quoting Abu Sufyan here, after that we go to the grave of Razia Sultan through the narrow alleys of Bulbuli Khana. They say, how do people live here? People live here and live happily. They live together. Mil ke reh rahe hain. Even if my enemy lives in my neighborhood and he gets to know that a mishap has happened to me and that there is no one to take care of me at home, he will be the first to rush me to the hospital. And he will know what's going on in my home. So in times of trouble, at least, people here come together and stand with each other. So in these narrow alleys, people get a sense of how lives are being lived and lived happily. Abu Sufyan was talking about the walks that Purani Dilli Walon Ki Baatein had started conducting in Old Delhi. The focus of these walks, rather than what had happened in the past, was how people continued to live in the old city. Our walks are more focused on the people living in Old Delhi, not just what happened in 1857 or in 47. Aaj kya hai? What Old Delhi is today. I want to preserve and show the Delhi that remains. The dates that Abu Sufyan mentions here are significant. Both 1857, the bloody defeat of the rebellion against the East India Company and the end of the Mughal court, and the partition of 1947 and its continuing legacies of violence and displacement have deeply marked and affected Old Delhi, especially its Muslims. But despite this traumatic history, some of the lifeways of the pre-colonial Mughal city, including its traditions of different communities living together more or less harmoniously, still persist. Despite all that Old Delhi has gone through, by living and growing up here, you still carry remnants of pre-colonial urbanity within you. The past is never quite history because you embody it. With heritage walks, my motive has always been that it is not authors or historians or tour guides who should lead them, but local people from here. The reason being that even though we may feel that we are not historians, we are not anything, and we don't know that much, but because we've been living this life for the past 30 or 40 years, it has settled in our blood. We may not be aware of it, but when people interact with us, they get a new story they won't find in a textbook or in William Dalrymple. In October 2018, I went on a heritage walk organized by Purani Dilli Walon Ki Baatein in Old Delhi. The tour started from Ghalib's Haveli in Balli Mara in Old Delhi, now a memorial to him run by the Delhi government. The walk was being led by Anas Faizi, who is an Urdu poet well known for his mizah or humorous poetry. Anas has an MA in Urdu literature from Delhi University, works as a teacher in the Delhi government school system, and does occasional work for Urdu radio and television as well as comparing mushairas, along with leading heritage walks. One of the first questions asked to Anas after his introductory remarks was, what about the use of wine in Ghalib's poetry, and isn't this against Islam? Anas answered by giving some details of the metaphorical uses of wine in Urdu poetry. Shairi apni zaban hai. Then he smiled and said, Mullah se hum kehte hain ki jannat mein shair hi zyada paye jayenge. We tell the mullahs that poets will outnumber them in heaven. As we walked through the relatively quiet Sunday city with Anas and Abu Sufyan, The narrative and conversation moved seamlessly between the Delhi of Ghalib's era and the contemporary condition of the old city. As we were walking past Ahata Kale Sahab, the home of the Sufi, where Ghalib had taken refuge after being sprung from debtor's prison, where a girls' school operated by a Muslim charitable foundation now runs, Anas talked about how there was no science stream high school for girls in the old city, pointing towards the history of neglect of education in Old Delhi in post-colonial India. In the Hamdard Dawakhana complex, Anas talked about the foresightedness of Hakim Abdul Majid, who restarted the Dawakhana from scratch by selling Roo Afza. And when everyone was afraid of their lives for their lives during the tumult of partition, he had the foresight to plan ahead to buy plots of land in what was then the jungle near Tughlaqabad, which became the future site of Jamia Hamdard University. As we neared the Chowri Bazar metro station and the Haus Qazi police station, Sikandar Changezi, who has a treasure trove of historical documents related to the old city, pulled out a color illustration of what he said was Delhi ka Aakhri Mushaira, the last great poetic gathering of Delhi before the end of Mughal rule, remembered by literary convention as having happened in 1846. The illustration showed a beautiful chandelier illuminated hall full of the nobility of Old Delhi. This, he said, happened right where the Haus Qazi police station now stands. The contrast between the image of that chandelier lit hall, filled with some of the best Urdu poets of the 19th century, and the brutalist concrete architecture of the contemporary police station was what I carried with me as I walked into the Chowri Bazar metro station and took a train heading south. Was this juxtaposition an image of despair? The mushairas and poetic nashists were still going on, and Purani Delhi Walon Ki Baatein was now organizing them in the courtyards of traditional style homes that remained in the old city, and live streaming them on Facebook and archiving them on YouTube. Despite all the destruction that Old Delhi had gone through, it had not yet been destroyed. Culture had not yet become history. Conversations about and with Ghalib continued to unfold in homes and tea shops and libraries in the old city and beyond. The persistence and revival of the lifeways of Old Delhi in the face of overwhelming destruction brought to mind Ghalib's sher. मेहरबान हो कि बुला लो मुझे चाहो जिस वक्त मैं गया वक्त नहीं हूं कि फिर आ भी ना मैं गया वक्त नहीं हूं कि फिर आ भी ना सकूं. Be kind and call me whenever you wish. I am not past time that I cannot return. Ghalib is ubiquitously present in contemporary Delhi, far beyond the limits of the old city or Muslim identity. He appears as a character in popular stage plays like Anti-National Ghalib and Ghalib in Delhi. Couplets attributed to him flood social media, many of them fake. His image adorns new art being made in the city. I'm thinking of the work by Shiraz Hussain and Khwab Tanha Collective. The ubiquity of Ghalib in the landscapes of contemporary Delhi is part of a larger phenomenon, strange and wondrous even to those who are active participants in it. The sudden rise in popularity of Urdu literature, especially poetry, in Delhi over the last few years coinciding almost exactly with the coming into power of the Hindu nationalist Bharatiya Janata Party, or BJP. Urdu, since the partition of the subcontinent in 1947, has largely been identified with Muslims in India and has systematically been marginalized, especially in primary education. But the past few years have seen young people in urban North India, a generation identified with Anglophone call center jobs and the English novels of Chetan Bhagat, not only filling auditoriums to standing room only capacity to listen to Urdu poetry, but also writing Urdu poetry of surpassingly high quality. Posters of Urdu poets, a genre of pop art that did not exist till a couple of years ago, and again thanks to Shiraz Hussain and Khwab Tanha, are so popular now that they are being pirated. How do we understand these two intertwined phenomena of the prominence of Ghalib and the popularity of Urdu in contemporary Delhi? By being inextricably linked to the pre-colonial past and its intellectual, ethical, and affective traditions, Urdu poetry continues to question the dominance of the normative horizon of the nation-state and holds open other potentials of being, selfhood, and belonging than those demanded by post-colonial nationalist modernity. Ghalib in particular embodies the pre-colonial intellectual and ethical world of South Asia, A world that was to a very large measure destroyed, if not utterly transformed, by the events of 1857 and 58. Like his somewhat elder contemporary, Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Ghalib's own unorthodox doctrines emerged from within a discursive space of scholarly debate that was available in India at the turn of the 19th century and that was not shaped by the forces of colonial education. Ghalib embodies the anti absolutist and unorthodox potentials of a South Asian and Islamic early modern formation seeking to assert the freedoms of the subject, whose historical significance is lost by forcibly dragging it into other historical narratives of liberalism or nationalism. In what follows, I wish to show how Ghalib holds open many radically different potentials for people in contemporary India: a different relation to language and hence to selfhood, a different relation of the citizen to the nation state, and a different kind of relation of the individual to religious authority. A couple of weeks after the Heritage Walk, I met Anas Faizi one evening at a small tea shop in Old Delhi, an informal hangout for local poets. I brought up what he'd said about Ghalib at the Heritage Walk, and he smiled and said, "पहले मुझे खुदा से खौफ आता था, Ghalib पढ़ के मुझे ईमान आया. Earlier, I used to be afraid of God. After reading Ghalib, I truly came to faith. Because, Anas said, of the way that Ghalib could address God. To illustrate, he quoted this sher of Ghalib's. बंदगी में भी वो आजादा ओ खुद भी है कि हम उल्टे फिर आए दर काबा अगर वाह न हुआ. Even in servitude, we are so free and self-regarding that we turned back from the door of the Kaaba if it did not open. As for Ghalib's drinking, Anas said, none of us is a Partha, pure. But thanks to Ghalib, I now study the Quran closely in a study circle with an older friend because I don't want a third party interpreting its meanings for me. For instance, in the Quran, there are the Sabaeans. It is unclear who they are, and yet they are promised heaven. I want to think about these things on my own. Ghalib's refusal to be defined by religious identities, which Rana Appa was talking about before I started talking. Ghalib's refusal to be defined by religious identities and his disavowal of dogma might seem at odds with a contemporary India in which identitarian politics and religious nationalism are the dominant political discourses, leading to growing violence, polarization, and religious discrimination. But the years of the Modi regime have also seen the appearance of counter-publics, including in the sphere of religion, where radically different forms of association and discourse are experimented with, holding open alternatives to the discourse dominating the Godi media and WhatsApp University. The years of the Modi regime have, for instance, seen radical potentials opened up in Muslim religious life in India, many of them pushed for by young Muslims. In June 2018 in Old Delhi, during the month of Ramzan, I attended an iftar in which Shias and Sunnis broke their fast together and then prayed together. The iftar had been organized at short notice in response to a news story that had been given much air by the TV channels, in which a stamped, handwritten fatwa from the Darul Uloom Deoband was shown, which opined that it was not advisable for Sunnis to eat with Shias. 2 days after the story broke, on a Sunday, a joint Shia-Sunni iftar had been announced, organized by a coalition of Muslim journalists and media professionals and Muslim community leaders and young social activists, many of them also associated with Purani Dilli Walo Ki Baatein and friends with Anas and Abu Sufyan. I believe you were there too, Rana Appa.
I think I was the one who invited you and took you there.
Exactly. Joint Shia-Sunni Eid prayers had begun in Delhi and Lucknow in 2015, organized by young Muslims concerned about the divides among Muslims at a time of the political marginalization and demonization of the community. These young Muslims, rather than working against religious authorities, actively worked with them to ensure community acceptance of what had hitherto been unimaginable: Sunnis and Shias praying together despite their doctrinal and ritual differences. This particular iftar was followed by a collective namaz, which pushed some more boundaries of accepted dogma. The women insisted on praying along with and not separately from the men. So a joint Shia-Sunni iftar was followed shortly by a collective Maghrib namaz, in which Muslim men and women of different sectarian orientations prayed together behind a Shia imam. While Ghalib was notorious for not fasting during Ramzan, I cannot help but think that of this he would have approved. Um, in a conversation about poetry in September 2018, Saif Mahmood, a public promoter of Urdu and author of a book on Delhi's Urdu poets, Beloved Delhi, cited the same couplet that Anas had used, Bandagi mein bhi wo azada wo khud bhi hai ke hum, but to illustrate the self-respect and the concern for self-respect of the Urdu poets of 18th and 19th century Delhi that he'd written about. Khudbeen, the word that Ghalib uses in the couplet above, usually implies arrogance. But as Saif strongly suggested both in his prose and in conversation, khudbini can also mean, and can be literally translated to, self-regard. It is a term which implies not just arrogance, but literally looking at oneself, self-knowledge. Khudbini implies a certain self-scrutiny and not finding oneself wanting in the face of such scrutiny. The Urdu poet Farhat Ehsas characterizes the ghazal tradition of poetry as Andaroon ka akhbar, the newspaper of interiority. The proliferation of smartphones, cheap data plans, and the uploading of Urdu poetry in Roman and Devanagari scripts by websites such as rekhta.org, as well as the proliferation of mushaira recordings on YouTube, have made a vast embodied archive of this tradition of speaking of and speaking to the self, Andaroon ka akhbar, speaking of and speaking to the self, widely available to young people in India in a way that had not been possible even for an earlier generation, because of the virtual disappearance of Urdu from school education in India after partition and independence. This in turn has led to a resurgence of Urdu poetry in the popular culture of North Indian cities, with new poets writing ghazal poetry of astonishing originality and quality. Vipul Kumar is one of these poets, and the image I was going to show is essentially his Rekhta page. Growing up in Hanumangarh in Rajasthan, he had only been exposed to Urdu poetry through ghazal recordings and Bollywood music, till he moved to Kota for a year to prepare for engineering entrance exams in 2010 or thereabouts. Now, Kota is a city infamous in India as the place where Indian teenagers are under pressure as they devote years of their life and their parents' financial resources, enrolled in coaching centers to spend day after day, often for years, slogging to prepare for the insanely competitive entrance exams for the Indian Institutes of Technology. It is a city of anomie, a city of suffocating discipline for teenagers, a city with a suicide rate for young people which is off the charts. Vipul, in this city, discovered Urdu poetry as printed text, and he discovered Ghalib. Initially, from the bookstores in Kota, he picked up cheap paperback editions in Devanagari script of the selected poetry of the classical Urdu poets published by Sajan Peshawari. He read poetry on urdupoetry.com and got hold of Ghalib's Urdu Diwan. That whole year in Kota, he told me, मैंने लगातार शायरी पढ़ी. I continuously read poetry. While all around him young people were cracking up under pressure, Vipul was reading Ghalib, watching people weep without reason and forgetting to turn up for the second part of the IIT entrance exam. Today, Vipul is one of the most well-known of the new generation of young Urdu poets, along with being a successful developer of cell phone apps. Like many of the new poets who grew up without learning the Urdu script, he has taught it to himself, reads extensively in Urdu, and posts his ghazals on Facebook biscripturally in both Urdu and Hindi. In answer to my question as to how reading Ghalib had affected him, he said, "Before I read Ghalib, I did not know that experiences and emotions could have so many colors. तजुर्बात और एहसासात के इतने रंग हो सकते हैं." Reading Ghalib, he said, helps you confront your emotions. It produces in you the strength to be sensitive. आप अपने इमोशन से दो चार होते हैं. आप में सेंसिटिव होने की कुव्वत पैदा होती है. There is a story the other poets tell about Vipul, the new generation poet whose emergent oeuvre is most deeply influenced by Ghalib. It was a mushaira at Jamia Millia Islamia, a university known for its rambunctious audiences, where when Vipul started reading, the crowd went quiet. Then he read two shares. इस खराबी की कोई हद है कि मेरे घर से संग उठाए दरो दीवार निकल आते हैं. Is there any limit to this ruination that from my house the doors and walls come out carrying stones? इस कदर खस्ता तनी है कि गले मिलते हुए उसकी बाहों से भी हम पार निकल आते हैं. There is ragged bodiness to such an extent that when we embrace, we even pass beyond their arms. In the silence that followed the second couplet, someone yelled out in a tone of amazement, "Socha kaise?" How did you think that? How did you think that? The utterance of a stunned audience member tells us something of the potential that emergent Urdu poetry holds open for contemporary North Indian public culture across the divides of religion and scripts. The new generation of poets is drawing on the oeuvre of Urdu poetry, particularly Ghalib, to create new possibilities for language, imagery, and meaning making in an emergent, hybrid, multimedia, and multi script Hindi, Urdu, Hindustani public sphere, emerging out of a long impoverishment of language and its potentials created by the imposition of the Hindi Urdu divide and the marginalization of Urdu in post colonial India. And drawing upon Ghalib, emergent Urdu poetry creates new potentials for exploring and articulating selfhood and exalts the human condition, as in this couplet by Vipul, deeply informed by the poetry of Ghalib. मुझको आईना दिखाती है फरिश्तों की नजर और मैं हैरत इंसानी में डूबा हुआ हूं. The gaze of the angels shows me a mirror and I am drowned in the wonder of the human. Finally, the conclusion, which began with an image of Ghalib's Mazar, which I'll describe here. In the last few years, when I have visited Ghalib's Mazar, I have found it covered with flowers and chadars, like those offered at the shrines of Sufi saints. To understand Ghalib as a Muslim saint at this historical moment is a rebroadening of the Islamic tradition, its reclaiming of the tradition's critical edge. To insist that Ghalib is a Sufi and a saint is to insist that the lifeways he embodied, in the senses of an attitude of openness towards radical religious difference, as well as embodying a spirit of defiant philosophical inquiry, is Islamically legitimate and authoritative. And it is to insist that this Islam, which embodies such open disdain of worldly power and embodies such an elevation of the self, bandagi mein bhi wo azada aur khud bhi hai ki hum, is particularly relevant at a time when Muslims in India are assailed by majoritarian Hindutva and its drive to crush and eliminate minority and dissenting voices. That Ghalib as a wali holds open potentials for many non-Muslims as well, Vipul is an exemplar, also presents us with a characteristically Ghalibian paradox, one which confounds our usual divides of religion and literature, sacred and secular. For one, it illustrates Shahab Ahmed's argument that you do not need to be Muslim to make meaning in terms of Islam. It also confronts us with the radical possibility that what Sabah Mahmood characterizes as secularity, as a substrate of ethical sensibilities, attitudes, and dispositions, which allow an individual to live comfortably and even hospitably with religious difference without privileging the agency of the state, can be religious, particularly Islamic, in its origins. Ghalib as Wali allows us to see prophetic potentialities for South Asian selfhood and society, for a South Asian selfhood and society that may yet come to be. हूँ गर्मी ए निशात तसव्वुर से नगमा संज, मैं अंदली बे गुलशने ना आफरीदा हूँ. The heat of the joy of imagination fuels my songs. I am the nightingale of an uncreated garden. Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you, Anand. That was beautiful. And the way you presented it, the way you talked about, as I said, जितने लोगों के बारे में आपने बात की वो सब अपने ही हैं जिनके साथ हम लोग घूमे हैं फिरे हैं. And I would like to ask you before the audience asks, आपका favorite शेर कौन सा है गालिब का? अगर ये आप कहें कि इसमें मतलब that is गालिब for you, not just your favorite verse, but something which encapsulates गालिब for you.
मेरा जो मनपसंद गालिब का शेर है, क्या कहूँ मैं, जरा सा सोचना पड़ेगा, but the one that comes to mind immediately है, कयामत है कि सुन लैला का दश्त कैस में आना, ताज्जुब से वो बोला यूं भी होता है जमाने में. तो
पे मुझे याद आया कि बचपन में हम सुना करते थे, उस वक़्त हमें समझ में ये आया नहीं था शेर, जब अम्मा सुनाती थी वो तो बाद में आया। अच्छा मुझे माफ़ कीजिएगा बगैर मेरी मेमोरी इतनी अच्छी नहीं रही। वो जो है ना कि है क़यामत के हैं वे मुद्दई के हम सफ़र गालिब, वो काफ़िर जिसे खुदा को भी ना सौंपा जाए। कहीं इधर-उधर मतलब मैंने बहर में ज़रूर गलतियाँ करी हैं वो कहने में, बिकॉज़ आई थिंक फ्रॉम मेमोरी एज़ अ चाइल्ड, बट आई यूज्ड टू लव दैट काइंड ऑफ दिस थिंग कि खुदा को भी वो अपने उनको जो महबूब है उनसे खुदा को भी नहीं सौंपा जा सकते, तो इसलिए खुदा हाफिज भी नहीं कह रहे हैं। सो दैट काइंड ऑफ दिस थिंग वाज सो गालिब फॉर मी कि मतलब जो गालिब का एक क्या कहना चाहिए, सेल्फ कॉन्फिडेंस कहना चाहिए कि वो कहना चाहिए या जो भी कुछ कहना चाहिए कि वो अपने महबूब को खुदा हाफिज भी नहीं कह रहे हैं। So I used to love that, you know, and उस वक्त इतना समझ में नहीं आता था। अब उसकी जो है ना परतें, गालिब तो परतें खुलती हैं कि आप जितना इवॉल्व होते चले जाइए उतना उसके पीछे की एक-एक चीज जो है ना, जैसे आपने अभी समझाया कि वो अनस का जो आप जिक्र कर रहे थे कि उनको समझ में आया, तो गालिब जो है वो एक ऊपरी तौर पे है, फिर एक और अंदर जाइए, डूबते ही रहिए उसमें, समंदर ही है।
गालिब में तो हमारे सफर की अभी शुरुआत हुई है।
हाँ।
अच्छा, एक सवाल मैं भी पूछना चाहूंगी क्योंकि सब लोग सवाल पूछना चाह रहे हैं। तो ये गालिब जो है, माने हाउ इज इट, सो व्हेन वी वर यंगर, माय जनरेशन, the Ghalib that we knew was from, of course, home and the serial. How is it that it's now that that he's re-emerged, or is it that I'm missing the point? He's suddenly re-emerged in the the 21st century as a very important force to reckon with. So he is really the wali. Was he the wali also in the late 20th century? Or was he perceived as somebody who's a humanist, a revivalist, or somebody who's an essential believer in humanism, and of course his poetry was well known, and please could you shed some light on that, like this whole universality that we talk about?
Now, the Ghalib's universality is the one thing that we can all agree on, right? That's
right.
Everyone turns to Ghalib with all of their differing points of view and different, philosophies, and they all find meaning in Ghalib. So I haven't worked on this, but Syed Akbar Haider has written about, for example, how the progressive writer, the Tarakki Pasand, they kind of turned back to Ghalib and they were like, yeah, Ghalib is essentially talking about a secular humanism like we are talking about it, right? Which is what we've all inherited, right? In Aligarh and Delhi, and the people who made the TV serial Ghalib, Kaifi Azmi and Gulzar, they are also part of the progressive writers movement.
Absolutely.
So they had a very hegemonic kind of reading of Ghalib, which I think made Ghalib more, in some sense, made us read Ghalib as secular. But there's also been this kind of tradition ke Ghalib wali hai, which has always been much more subterranean, right? So you have figures like I forget, I'm just Bijnori, जिन्होंने वो लिखा महासिन कलाम गालिब, कि जिसमें उनका वो पहले the first thing he says is that there's two हिंदुस्तान की दो इल्हामी किताबें हैं, एक वेद है और एक दीवान गालिब है. So that's been there. Then I think right within Khwaja Hassan Nizami and Hassan Sani Nizami kept celebrating Ghalib's birthday. I mean, he's buried right there in Nizamuddin. So there was always some kind of veneration of his specialty and his link to revelation. What's happening now, I think, is that the new people who have discovered Ghalib, right, which is tied up with the discovery of Urdu, essentially for new people, this is something that's in a sense mysterious. It's just like people have been hungering for language and voice, but they have none of the older ideologies to they're just going straight into the internet and into Urdu, or Urdu seekh rahe hain, or cheezein ajeeb. There's all of the old gatekeeping functions in a sense have broken down. So all of these new possibilities of reading Ghalib are emerging, I guess.
I'd like to come. एक तो मैं वो शेर सही कर दूं, क़यामत के मुद्दई का हम सफर गालिब, वो काफिर जो खुदा को भी ना सौंपा जाए है मुझसे. हम लोग छोटे थे, हमें ये बहुत पसंद था. और आपने अभी कहा तो एक तो मैं कहूंगी कि ट्विटर जो है that has been greatly responsible for popularizing गालिब. हम लोग, मैंने जब शायर शुरू किया था 2011 में, तो मुझे याद है 2011 के जो दिसंबर था उसमें हम लोग ने सबने तय किया कि गालिब को 27 दिसंबर पे ट्रेंड करवाना है। तो 200-300 शेयर उनके एक आदमी ने डाले। उस टाइम पे ट्विटर जेल हुआ करता था, वीवर एंड ट्विटर, मतलब दिन में 4 या 5 दफे हम ट्विटर जेल में गए बिकॉज पोस्टिंग सो मेनी वर्सेस ऑफ गालिब। एंड गालिब हो या कोई भी गजल हो, उसका शेयर इज जस्ट सूटेड फॉर ट्विटर बिकॉज वो पूरी एक कहानी आपका पहले 140 कैरेक्टर्स में आ जाती थी, अब 280 में आ जाती है। एक वन वर्स इज एब्सोल्युटली कंप्लीट, सो यू डोंट नीड टू उसमें आपको पूरा, जैसे अगर वो नज्म है या कविता है तो आपको उसमें काफी कुछ लिखना पड़ता है। यहाँ तो एक आपने मिसरा लिख दिया, आपका काम हो गया। सो ट्विटर हैज बीन, एज आई सेड, कि हमारा उस तब से लेके हर साल ऑलमोस्ट, हमने शुरू में 4-5 साल गालिब को 27 दिसंबर पे हम लोग ट्रेंड करवाते थे और उसके ऊपर इतने शेयर पोस्ट करना, उसके बारे में बात करना। तो दैट हैज आल्सो बीन रिस्पांसिबल फॉर पॉपुलराइजिंग एंड सेंसिटाइजिंग पीपल टू उर्दू पोइट्री। अच्छा, अब नहीं, लेकिन to have a lot of people who used to explain कि भाई इसका मतलब क्या है। हम लोग आर्टिकल्स भी लिखा करते थे कि इसके पीछे का मतलब what are the hidden meanings of, what is the symbology क्या है, शराब की क्या वो है, सिंबोलिज्म है, ये सब चीजें हम एक्सप्लेन किया करते थे। एंड ऑल दिस आई एम टॉकिंग ऑफ 2011 एंड दैट हैज गॉन। उसके बाद खैर फिर रेख्ता आ गया 2013-2014। So these things, like हमारा, जैसे अब शायर हमारा आज भी चल रहा है, अभी भी हमारा जब भी गालिब होता है तो उस दिन सारे लोग एक्टिव हो जाते हैं, 300-400 तो आ ही जाते हैं ट्वीट्स ऑन गालिब and any day on any this thing. So I would feel कि Twitter and social media have gone a long way in popularizing Urdu poetry because लोगों ने, और जब एक दफे आपको थोड़ा सा कहते ना कि खून, शेर के मुंह में खून लग जाना, तो आपको
बिल्कुल
होता है, फिर उसके बाद आप उसमें और कूदते हैं और गहराई में जाते हैं। नाउ आई नो सो मेनी पीपल हु हैव लर्नड उर्दू। मेरे अपने शायर में ही बहुत लोग हैं जिन्होंने उर्दू सीखी है और खुद शायरी कर रहे हैं। आप चाहे जो भी जैसे भी कर रहे हैं, लेकिन कोशिश कर रहे हैं और सीखने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं। सो आई थिंक सोशल मीडिया को हम गाली जरूर देते हैं, बट सोशल मीडिया हैड प्लेड अ पॉजिटिव रोल आल्सो इन मेनी थिंग्स।
Yeah, it certainly played a very positive role in the dissemination of Urdu, जैसे कि आप कह रही हैं। क्योंकि सोशल मीडिया में दो चीजें, एक तो है कि आप यू कैन एम्पलीफाई मिस इन्फॉर्मेशन, बट पीपल आल्सो क्रिएट दीज नेटवर्क्स व्हिच वर नॉट पॉसिबल अदरवाइज।
Right.
So, and those networks have had a huge role in the growth of Urdu poetry, as Rana was saying, but also the ways in which people can communicate with each other. I am sitting in Nashville right now. सारे शायर अपने दिल्ली के जो शोरा हैं वो अपने घरों में बैठे हैं. But because I'm on WhatsApp and I'm on part of their groups, I can see उनके क्या technical discussions चल रही हैं on बहर के ऊपर, you know. और अब सब घर पे बैठे हुए, so all of these things are going on. Yeah.
अब इस वक्त नहीं, मैं इस वक्त हम लोग जो है, जैसे ऑक्सीजन है, आईसीयू बेड्स है, सब दुनिया भर की अपील्स हमारी ट्विटर पे चल रही हैं। ऑल द वाइल दैट आनंद वाज स्पीकिंग, आई वाज ऑन द मोबाइल ट्विटर एंड ऑन द व्हाट्सएप ट्राइंग टू फाइंड के अलीगढ़ में ऑक्सीजन कहाँ रिफिल हो सकती है। सो हम गालियां देते हैं, जरूर है कि सोशल मीडिया हैज बीन एंड व्हाट्सएप हैज बीन इंस्ट्रूमेंटल इन अ लॉट ऑफ टॉक्सिसिटी, बट बहुत पॉजिटिव चीजें भी निकली हैं उससे। And of course dissemination of
परवेज आलम बोलते हैं, चलिए राना आप, why don't you read this?
मिलती है खुए यार से नार, इल्तहाब में काफिर हूँ गरना। परवेज ने भी कहाँ से चीज निकाली है परवेज, आप भी ये
इंग्लिश हो राहत अजाब में, कब से हूँ क्या बताऊं जहाने खराब में। ये वो वाली गजल है, शबाए हिज्र को भी रखूंगा हिसाब में।
मैं काफिर हूँ गरना मिलती हो राहत अजाब में। I have been struggling to get the explanation of this couplet for last 10 years. परवेज खुद बहुत पहुंचे हुए हैं उर्दू में।
नहीं, अगर no, thankfully we still have the saya of some of the people like Sadiq और रहमान के दुआई जो गालिब को बहुत अच्छा समझाते हैं, और I think we can take this up there. एंड एक उनका चार्म जो है गालिब का, वो एक इटर्नल चार्म है। उसको मतलब शायद हर जेनरेशन अलग तरीके से, अलग फॉर्म में इंटरप्रेट करेगी और उसको समझेगी अलग तरीके से, लेकिन जो उनका चार्म है वो मेरे ख्याल से कभी मतलब you can't really contest that. I believe that's something that has been there. So with that thought we have to end because we are nearing an hour, Thank you so very much, Rana Appa, and thank you so very much, Dr. Tadeja. I want to share this with our viewers that here is the book that Dr. Anand Taneja has written. So, Dr. Anand, is this an expensive book?
Not
It's available. I should be saying this, but I think that there's some
you,
PDF
Megadeth.
is floating around, so people can just read it.
दिस
Yeah.
इज अ वंडरफुल बुक. इसको मैंने क्या कहते हैं रिव्यू भी किया था.
Uh,
एंड ये किताब आप लोग जरूर खरीदें, स्पेशली जो लोगों को मतलब इट्स अ बुक ऑफ नॉट ओनली जस्ट हिस्ट्री एंथ्रोपोलॉजी एंड सोशियोलॉजी, लेकिन देयर इज अ लॉट ऑफ ह्यूमन इंटरेस्ट एंगल इन दिस आल्सो. और जिनों को से कौन नहीं, मतलब जिनों की कहानियों पे तो हम लोग पढ़े हुए हैं. तो ये ऑनलाइन भी अवेलेबल है. यू कैन फाइंड इट ऑन अ लॉट ऑफ दिस थिंग. स्क्रिप्ट पर है. इनफैक्ट मेरे पास तो खैर कॉपी आनंद नहीं दी थी, लेकिन इट्स अवेलेबल ऑन स्क्रिप्ट एंड यू कैन रीड इट देयर. एंड बहुत ज्यादा महंगी भी नहीं है, खरीदी भी जा सकती है. इट्स वर्थ द प्राइस. एंड आई एम वेटिंग नाउ फॉर आनंद सेकंड बुक.
And tell us about your second book before we end this session, Dr. Taneja.
So what you just heard would probably be is part of the second book, which is a broader project on looking at. I was in India in 2018, and then came back in 2019 and 20, basically to do research on Indian Muslim ethical and political life in the time of Hindutva. So I spent a lot of time in Jamia and in Aligarh and Delhi and Lucknow, largely. But I was listening to paying attention to poetry, politics, and ethics, and how all of these things are unfolding in the face of what we've been living with. And so I found, for me, I think partly personal interest, but just paying attention anthropologically to how people were talking, I found that poetry was a way in which a lot of communication of both feelings and ideas was going on. So poetry is kind of the center of the book.
People who are careful of what they say on social media, बहुत सारी चीजें पोइट्री में कह जाती हैं.
हाँ.
तो सदियों से चलता आ रहा है शायद वो लोग
मुझे याद
ना केवल इश्क बल्कि सब चीजें वो लोग indirectly बोल सकते थे.
Secrets also, but that is how I comment. I just put a verse which I feel is just apt. Acha, Parvez has writes, Ghalib writes against all kinds of hollow symbolism which has no value and no takers, and the clergy class has created cocoon of interpreters of religion, converting the mazhab into the commercial venture. Anand, would you like to take this?
Well, I mean, I think that's what I'm saying, right? That people recognizing Ghalib is to say that Islam ये भी है कि जो एक तरह से symbolism की शिकनी कर रहे हैं Ghalib, ये भी, that this kind of philosophical and tolerant essentially philosophical and tolerant point of view that Ghalib embodies is actually also very deeply Islamic, and to recognize that is to, in a sense, push against the hollow symbolism, I would say. And that that's my interpretation of the ways I've seen Ghalib being respected as a wali in contemporary times, which is not what I used to see before. अब पहले Ghalib के मज़ार पे चादरें नहीं चढ़ रही थी, आजकल चढ़ रही हैं.
बिल्कुल.
No,
so I think
as we are speaking, I just like to add one thing more. There was a appeal from somebody in Aligarh whose father needed a ventilator and they didn't have the funds, and we had been appealing on Twitter, and she has just messaged to say that we've got the available funds and ventilator bed unko mil raha hai.
How wonderful. How
So
wonderful.
to finish this session
on this positive note, and I think we could also join like the whole world in praying for India, in praying for the world, in hoping that things get under control. In the meantime, please stay at home, stay safe, wear your mask, even if you are meeting someone you've known for a while and you consider them as safe, because really you have to watch out for yourself. I also want to add something before we close this session. A very dear friend who's known to all three of us here, Ishan Sharma, lost his father yesterday. Such is the pathos, such is the torment of this time that he's in Kanpur with his mother, COVID positive, and his father had to be cremated without the two of them. So this is that sort of time which is gut wrenching. It's your heart bleeds, but please be safe.
Yes.
This is-
Look after
Look
yourself.
after yourself.
डबल मास्क पहने सब लोग. मैं तो सबसे कह रही हूँ N95 पहनिए और डबल मास्क पहनिए. उनका था डॉक्टर फहीम यूसुफ का कि द वायरस हैज upped its game, you have to up yours. So जो लास्ट ईयर था वो अब नहीं है. लास्ट ईयर ऐसा कहर नहीं मचा हुआ था.
अब हम लोगों को भी सतर्क रहना पड़ेगा. तो इसी के साथ हम लोग आज की शाम खत्म करते हैं. Thank you very much again, and thanks everyone for being with us. Khuda Hafiz. Good night.
Good night. Shab
Yeah,
bakhair.
Hafiz.